Hey guys, this is Amber from NotableInk.com, and I'm here to share a card with you using Simon Says Stamp's new background stamp. It's called Sketchy Lines Background, and I've paired that with sketched flowers. We're going to be doing some masking today to create this card, and I'll also be doing some coloring with some Altenew artist markers. Of course, if you have Copics or a different type of alcohol marker, you could use those as well. So let's get started. I started by putting some repositional adhesive on the back of my card front, and I'm going to start by stamping down the sketched flowers with permanent black ink. So you want to use a Copic safe ink for that. And I'm going to put down a piece of Post-it tape there so that I can create a mask. Now, I don't usually do masking. It's one of the reasons I love the new mask and stencil products that are out. So I went ahead and fussy cut that out. And I'm going to line up my stamp. You want to make sure that you take out your foam pad that you have in your MISTI, because this is a red rubber stamp, which is thicker than your clear stamp. So I've got everything lined up, and I just covered the rest of it with some Post-it tape. And I'm going to stamp this a few times, again, with that permanent black ink, so any kind of alcohol marker safe ink. And red rubber stamps are amazing. I'm glad that they chose that for this particular stamp because the lines are so fine that you get a really good impression with them. So you could see there was a halo where my mask was. So you just want to make sure that you press down really well where your mask is. So I'm just taking off the mask here. And you can see that because I had the rest of the flowers covered up, I don't have any lines there. I thought about cutting another mask and didn't really feel like it, so I'm just going to deal with that later. So I'm going to go ahead and dry all my ink. I want to make sure it doesn't smear when I start coloring, and I did get a little smear on that flower, so I'm just using my eraser to get that off. And I'm going to start off with the, I think these are the Cool Summer Night markers. I'll have all of the colors of the markers, the actual names of the markers, listed on my blog post, and then you can see the numbers of the colors right above. So I'm just putting a spare piece of cardstock underneath my panel here just to absorb some of that extra ink. And I'm just going back in and adding a little more contrast to this. It looks like a blueberry to me, which is why I did it in blue. I'm sure that's not what it is, but that's what it looks like. So, I recently had a lot of success with a card that I did with the Altenew Beautiful Peony set. And then this happened. So with that card, I decided, okay, I'm not going to call myself a beginner anymore. I'm going to say more intermediate. And then I don't know what happened with this petal. This is why I still feel like a beginner, you guys, because look at that petal. Like, I can't even stop looking at it. That first purple one that I did, total nightmare. It's just like a big old block of color. So moving on from that, I'm like, I can't even deal with it right now. We'll go back and deal with that later. And so when I color with my Altenew markers, I start with the dark and go to the lightest. Now with these purples, I find that it needs a little bit of a transition shade. And so what I do with this purple set is I do the tip to tip technique. So you can see that I was doing it there. And I'll just take the lightest marker and touch it to the next darkest marker to have a little bit more of a transition between those four colors. And that really helps me get a much better blend with this particular color set. I don't need to do that with most of them, but this set seems to need that. So a note about this purple flower. So after I was done with it, I was a little happier with the rest of the petals. I still really didn't like that first petal that I did because it was just a big dark block of color. And I let it sit for a little bit, and I'll move on to the orange flowers that you'll see next. But what I ended up doing off camera, and just kind of keep an eye on this purple flower, is I went in with my colorless blender and lightened up the tips of these flowers. And unfortunately, I don't have that on film, but you will see a difference between this flower. So it'll be kind of dark, so you can see the petals, the tips of the petals there are that lightest shade of purple, which is a little desaturated. So I go in with a colorless blender and I lighten up those tips, and I lightened up that darkest petal there quite a bit. So you can see that here. So that the purple flower, the tips are already a little lighter, and I'll actually go back in again and do another application of that colorless blender. So with my orange flower here, I started with just the yellow and the orange, and that wasn't enough contrast. So then I grabbed, I'm pretty sure that's ruby red, And I'm going to do ruby red as my darkest color, and then the orange, and then I'll blend that into the yellow. Now, because these are three completely different colors, I definitely need to do the tip-to-tip technique with this in order to get a good blend. And it's pretty easy to do. I found you can either just leave your marker laying on the table, or you can hold them like this and just have them in your hand to more quickly do that tip-to-tip technique. So you can see that here. And in the larger petals like that one, I'll go back in and do another coat of those colors to make sure that I have enough contrast there. So I'll end up doing 2 orange flowers. I'll skip the second one so that you don't have to watch it again. And then I'll move on to some red flowers, which is going to be very similar to the orange ones. And again, I'll have the color names listed in my blog. So this is a very similar technique here. I'm just doing that tip to tip. And what am I using? Am I only using 2 colors? No, I do have 3 colors. And I think I'm using a mix of the pinks. It's not one color family. And sometimes I'll do that. I'll use a mix of them, especially if I don't want a desaturated color. Like rouge, I think goes with some of these colors, and that one has a little more gray in it. So I'll pick a lighter pink from a different set. And so don't be afraid to, even though they're meant to be 4 colors together, don't be afraid to switch that up and grab a different color. For the centers of these red flowers, I considered adding a different color, but then I opted to just keep everything the same color. I didn't really want to introduce another color, and I suppose I could have done orange or something like that, but I just kept it all red. And then for my greenery, I used Frayed Leaf and Forest Glades from set A. And actually for those, I think I started with the lightest color and then brought in my darker color. Oh, I actually added a little bit of, is that evergreen? I think that's evergreen to that as well to add some deeper contrast. So there we go. So now I'm taking just a fine liner. This is a Micron 01 pen. So you want to try and match. So the lines of the stamp are very fine. So you want to pick a fine liner that has a similar size tip as those lines so that things look cohesive. I was not about to cut out an entire mask for that, you guys. And again, the whole name of the stamp set is Sketchy Lines Background. So I felt like my lines don't need to be perfect, so I'm just going to draw those in way faster than cutting out a mask and then restamping this or trying to line that up or anything like that. So you can do that. And then I do go ahead, once I'm done with these lines, I do go ahead and heat set it again, because then I decide that I wanted to add a little bit of background. Now, I think that I prefer this card right here with the white background. I don't know, you tell me in the comments what you like better, but I decided to channel my inner Kelly Latavola, who loves to add blue to her backgrounds. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I think this card needs a little something extra. And I didn't like it too much. I think you can see right there, I think my execution is not awesome. So I kind of play around with a couple things. So at first I thought, well, maybe it'll just be a shadow. And then I was like, I don't like the way just a shadow looks. It looks weird. So then I started to draw that out into a larger area. Then I grabbed the colorless blender to try and blend the edges, and that was weird. And then I'm going out to the right instead of like up and down, and I don't like it at all. So then I'm like, all right, I have to do more. So then I start going with the direction of the lines, and I'm going and kind of adding this, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's all right. I guess that's a little bit better. And I couldn't decide, do I leave it like that and leave the white at the top? I didn't want to have a completely blue background. Because I wanted to highlight this background stamp a little bit, and I thought maybe the white at the top would help to offset my sentiment that I'm going to put up there. So I moved back to the flowers, and I decided that I needed some highlights on my flowers. So I just grabbed a gel pen. This is the Signo Uniball gel pen, and I was struggling with this pen. So you can see I'm drawing on my fingers like Kathy Rack does. And I decided to add a little bit to the flowers here. And I like the highlights that I added to these flowers. I was struggling with this pen, so I switch over to a Sakura Jelly Roll. That was an 05. I didn't like that. So then I switched to the 8, and that was better. And then I totally go overboard, you guys, on these orange flowers and add way too much highlight. So I don't mind the highlights on the other flowers, but on the orange flowers, it's just a little too much, but it is what it is, and I'm embracing it, and we're moving on. So here's a close-up so you can see all of those highlights. Again, I think that the highlights pretty much saved that purple flower, but it's this top orange flower that too much there. And I probably could have covered some of it up with the marker again, but I didn't want to ruin it, so I'm leaving it alone. For the sentiment, I used Altenew fine alphabet die and Label Love stamp set, and there is the complete finished card. I hope that you guys enjoyed this today. You know, I'm still getting used to my coloring, and I have really good days and then other days where my confidence just kind of wavers, and you know what? That's probably pretty normal and happens to a lot of people. You guys get to see that on film. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button so that other people can enjoy this video as well. That's the only way that YouTube shares it out to people. So I really appreciate any comments or feedback and likes, all of that good stuff. Thanks so much for stopping by, and have a great day.